Welcome to the MADLOVE Your Life Show. I'm Mary Dee, the Joy Catalyst, here to be your host and transformation guide. Mad Love is about the mad, making a difference, and love is what we serve up to live a delicious life. My intention is to help you spark new ideas, break limiting beliefs, and align with your deepest dreams and desires. Get ready for laughter, inspiration, and finding your inner roar in every show. Hey everyone, I hope that you are having a fantastic week and that life is treating you to so much joy. It has actually been a little bit of a tough week for me. And if it's been a tough week for you, then I'm wishing you the courage to keep on going and the peace of mind to know that better days are certainly ahead of you. My heart is heavy this week because I'm reflecting on a friend that suddenly passed. And it came as a surprise to myself and my friends who knew him. And I'm reminded that we just don't really get to know if the people we see today are going to be alive and well tomorrow. We actually don't know if we're going to be alive and well tomorrow, but most of us certainly go to bed at night thinking that we will be for the most part. And I often speak about winks from the universe, and I feel like I got a really good one the following morning after I found out the news. And I ended up pulling a card from my oracle deck, and it has this beautiful fractal art. And when I pulled this card, for those of you that don't know what an oracle deck is, I'm going to grab it so you can see this. It's these beautiful deck of cards that have been infused with like a good energy, a good oracle, and they're super pretty, just each one has kind of a different energy and a different meaning to them. And as I pull the cards, they each have a like a gift of being the art. So you get the artwork. And then there's a little guidebook that tells you what each one means. And so ideally you would, infuse your thoughts or questions into a card, and then it gives you a saying, or it gives you some direction. And it's fun. Hold on, because you can actually most of the time, at least, you can link it to what might be going on in your life or what might be showing up for you in some different ways. And so I'm going to grab the card that I actually pulled so you can see it. It's actually this card. Let me make sure I can put it up here. And this is the card that I pulled. And what's funny is this card is about a message from the afterlife. And I want to read it to you. This card is called Loved Ones. And the message that it reads says, your friends and loved ones who have crossed over want you to know that they are with you. They are wrapping their loving energy around you and ask you to feel peace and serenity within your heart and mind about their passing. They are living and enjoying the other side and deeply desire for you to feel peaceful within this world. They ask that you surrender to any painful emotions you're holding on to and allow their loving presence to flow within your heart, bringing forth peace and serenity. Feel their loving energy and joyfully live the gift of life here on earth. So this one was really special. And by the way, this particular deck is called Divine Guidance, and it's by Cheryl Lee Harnish. And what's helpful also in the beginning is it actually gives you like some tips on how to use the deck, and you can go through like what are fractals and how do you make the connection and what are different ways you can read the cards. Really fun. And look, if you believe in a little woo and you believe that there's extra energy out there and that there's a way for the universe to wink at you through signs, then having an oracle deck is a great way to participate in that. If you don't, then it can also just be a fun way to interact with your own energy and see what comes up. So either way, I think there's a win there. So anyway, Although my friend passed and passed so suddenly, and I'm sad to know that I'm not going to be able to share a meal with him again or take a walk on the beach, this message really gave me a lot of peace that maybe we do still walk the beach together. And it could be my cue to be more present to the energy that surrounds me and to remember that when I think I'm alone, maybe I'm never actually alone. What do you think? So, this week on the show, what I want to actually talk to you about is something that hit me pretty hard when I read it. And I say that it hit me hard because the reality of it was very present for me. One of the things that I do in dating is that I get to this point where I'll date one man exclusively and I go all in. And I go all in so that my heart stays open, so that I'm giving it a chance to thrive and for me to show up fully. I want to show up fully and authentic and in my full expression from the beginning. And there's also another side of this. And the side of this is that I also realize that in showing up this way, I'm showing up fully because it's the only way I know how to do it. I don't know that I'm fully clear on the difference between being a wife and being a girlfriend. I was a wife for a really long time. And I've tossed it around in my mind a few times. And what I would say is that there is an absolute loyalty that comes with being a wife. And there is the knowing that this is long term, right? At least the plan is long term. Versus being a girlfriend, there's still a level of distance between maybe crossing the threshold of loyalty because you don't have the convenience of time yet. There just hasn't been enough time in the relationship to build the trust that normally takes years to develop because time has passed. And it's in these moments of reflection that I realize that I'm certainly someone who enjoys the fun of dating, but I more enjoy the consistency and connection of a long-term relationship and just having a person that you can really invest in and they invest in you. And this has helped me because it challenges me to learn to build trust through my actions and words and allow that person to do the same. And that way we get through the trust process much faster, right? And I'm allowing someone to show up and believing who they say they are. And I want them to believe me too. And I do my best not to play those games that people play, which might include withholding love or hiding needs. My goal is to always just be myself because that's the way that I want to be loved. And I want to be loved for fully being myself. I don't want to show up wearing a mask that gets taken off later and surprise, I'm someone different. Especially just when they're getting comfortable with the version of who they thought that I was. And I want the same in return. I want someone to feel like they can show up fully with all the good, the bad, the ugly, and still be loved for who they are. Because everyone shows up with some level of baggage. Every rose has its thorn. Guns N' Roses wasn't wrong. So, one of the best compliments I have received from others is that you get what you see. And this has been their reflection to me to say, hey, that I'm not showing up presenting in one way and then changing it later, but rather that I am the same and consistent from the beginning. So I don't show you a photo of me with blonde hair and then you come meet me and my hair is green, right? And that's a simplification of my example. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with being a chameleon when you need to, because if you're not, let's say you're not outgoing, but you need to tap into your outgoing persona to get through a work networking event, then I say go for it, play the role. There's not a judgment or a right or wrong way, but we can also celebrate the ways that feel good to be acknowledged. And so that was one of mine. And in this observation, it led me to the next thing that I observed, which is how good it feels to be able to reflect back to someone my experience of them, particularly when it's positive, and in turn, how I want someone to reflect back to me, how they're experiencing me. And when I was going through my separation of my long-term relationship, I was listening to a counselor discuss why relationships break down. And why do people get this huge distance between them? Especially when they're fighting and things just never feel like they can get on the same page. And the counselor was saying that what happens is that there are just more negative interactions than positive ones, and that it takes at least two positive interactions to make up for the one negative interaction. And in learning this, I said to myself, how can I create more positive interactions in my own relationships? And not just with a partner, but with my peers, with my friends, with my teams, even my show guests, right? We get to positively interact on the show. And then the team does a little social media carousel and a couple show promos. And after that, they get a little gift in the mail. And then after that, we re promote their show later. So there's all these small positive interactions that create an overall positive experience. And that's really what we're talking about. So one of the kindest things that I believe we can do for someone else is to see them in their authentic self. Identify with what we like or enjoy about that part and then share it with them. I think that this is such a fun way to delight people and acknowledge them for who they are, especially when it's something that probably comes naturally to them, so much so that they don't even recognize it as a gift. So, for example, this week I was having a conversation with my lover, and one of the things that came up was around coaching soccer. He was telling me a story about a parent who was also a coach who kept saying that the referees made the team lose. And we had this whole interesting conversation around this because obviously referees are not always going to make perfect calls every single time. They do make mistakes. But as a blanket statement, if we're constantly blaming referees for losing the game, and that's our only excuse every time, then what are we teaching our children in that process? Are we teaching them that life's disappointments are not their fault? Are we teaching them not to trust the people in a place of power that are supposed to be neutral or helping us? Are we teaching our children to look to blame others instead of figuring out how we could have showed up better? Do we bypass the possibility or the possible fact that perhaps the other team was just better prepared? Are we ultimately teaching them to not take any ownership or responsibility for life's disappointments? And in that, are we robbing them of learning to build resilience when they are faced with adversity? And as I listened to him talk about this topic, I realized how much honor he has for the spirit of competition. And in addition to that, he has a high standard for what happens on the field, right? We're talking about elementary aged, tiny little kids who are just playing for recreation. Okay, this is not uh, national, conferences. This is not the major leagues. So in in this container, he has a rule like we don't swear on the field. We speak respectfully to each other. They pay real referees to come in and actually ref these games so that there's no biases like when parents and siblings volunteer as referees for games. And it was interesting because I found myself really magnetized to him even more because of this. There's a level of leadership that he's displaying in all of this that I find super sexy. And it's something that makes it easy for me to ease into my feminine because I feel safe with a masculine who's clearing that path for me emotionally. I highly value integrity. And in this display of integrity, I found that he has a high sense of personal ownership. And this is the one trait that I find to be the catalyst for most people who are happier, better problem solvers, and are more resilient. This type of person has a high sense of personal ownership versus blaming others for the situation they're being faced with. They aren't waiting for someone to save them. They're looking for solutions on how to fix the issue. They have the fortitude that's needed to face life head on. They are looking to create more positive interactions than negative ones. And so often, those positive interactions are actually the ones right here between our own two ears. They're the ones in our mind. They're the thoughts, our thoughts being those positive interactions. And my guess is that you can think of someone in your own life who fits into either one of these character traits. And if you find that you are someone who complains a lot, or you're always pointing the finger at someone else for what's happening, then I might actually be speaking to you. Also, remember that whenever we point a finger, we always have to be prepared to look in the mirror and point at ourselves, because none of us are perfect. And if you're becoming aware of this behavior for the first time, and you're saying, oh my gosh, I'm fully recognizing that this is the trait that's keeping me in a place where I'm operating from anxiety instead of a place of power, then to you, I would say congratulations, because from here on out, you are empowered for the rest of your life to stop yourself as soon as you start pointing fingers or blaming others, and ask yourself, even though I don't think I'm in the wrong, because our brain always wants to make us right, is there anywhere in this situation where I can take ownership of this situation to change or shift the outcome, or change and shift my perspective? What do I need to own that will help me shift my perspective to change how I feel? And I want to give you an example of this. So if lightning came out of the sky and your house burned down right now and everything you owned was in ashes, we can all agree that there is a level of devastation that any of us would feel from this kind of loss. But more importantly, what is your next thought or move after the catastrophe? And I want you to think about it for a moment. Typically, there's a couple trains of thoughts on this, and there's obviously a span that happens in the middle as well. So I'm going to give you those two extremes. And the one is the train of thought that goes to, this is ruin. There's an extreme here that results in despair, much like the despair felt by people who go to Vegas and gamble away their home. And that devastation is so great that they feel like there's no reason to live. There's the other side of the tracks, which is the train of thought that says, it's just stuff, it can be replaced, and woohoo, I get to go shopping for a new place. Let's go thrifting. Let's call in community to help during the devastation and turn this disaster into an opportunity to deepen connection. There is a great divide between the thinking on these two ways of thinking. And I really want you to recognize where you fall on the spectrum in these thoughts. Do you have really stinking thinking, or do you seek out the solution on how to move forward? Are you thinking of the best next step towards the better way, towards what you want, towards a solution, or are you thinking utter despair? Like, what is your natural thought here? And I want you to just acknowledge it and be aware of it. And you can acknowledge it. If you're on the positive end of things, you can be like, whoo, winning. Like, my mind is in a good place, even around disaster. Or is your mind in a really rough place? Do you really feel it in your body? And do you just feel the anxiousness of like, oh, losing all my things would just be the worst? It's okay to acknowledge that too, because it's just an awareness of how we're feeling and how we're responding to life. And the awareness that you have the power to change your thoughts, and that those thoughts can change your life for the better, because our thoughts are definitely things. And y'all, those are my musings for this week. I hope that you will all create more positive interactions in your life for better relationships across the board, whether that's in work, whether it's with your children, whether it's in your personal relationships, whether it's with your friends, whether it's with your community. I hope that you'll harness the power of taking personal ownership over your life. And there's a really great quote that says, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. So I hope you'll find a way to respond to life in a way that gives you peace and hope and joy. If you'd like to get in touch with us today, simply check out the show notes or pop down into the comment section and you'll see all the ways to get the mad love that's available for you. And until next time, may abundance always walk beside you. May joy always go before you. And may love always guide you on your path. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. We air live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Brave TV. We hope to see you back next week. For more ways to connect with my guests, content, programs, and retreats, just head over to www.marydee.com and subscribe. That's MARYDEE.com.